Anchors in the storm, the turbulent times of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. The peaceful setting provided the ideal getaway for the campaign-battered politician. As Franklin and his family relaxed on Campobello Island, off the coast of New Brunswick, the swirling world of national politics seemed far away. He had battled long and hard alongside Democratic presidential candidate James M. Cox during his 1920 run for the presidency. After their sound defeat by Warren G. Harding, the disappointed and exhausted vice presidential candidate Franklin Delano Roosevelt escaped from the political scene. In the summer of 1921, his family's New Brunswick summer home seemed to furnish the perfect retreat for Franklin, his wife Eleanor, and their 5 children. After unwinding and soaking up the sunshine on a bright August day, the 39-year-old Franklin began to feel weak. He retired early, hoping he could sleep off whatever was bothering him. When he awoke the next day, he was even worse. A high fever raged through his body, and his legs felt weak and painful. Within 2 days, he could no longer stand up. Eleanor called a number of doctors to examine her ailing husband. Several days later, one of them diagnosed the disease, poliomyelitis, commonly called polio. The path ahead would take even more courage and determination than Franklin's disheartening vice presidential run. As he clung to the hope that he could defeat the devastating effects of his illness, he envisioned the day he could cast off his heavy metal braces. But month by month, the realization bored into his consciousness that he likely never would. I think probably the thing that took the most courage in his life, Eleanor would later reflect, was his mastery and meeting of polio. I never heard him complain. Although he resolutely accepted his fate, Franklin decided his disabling illness signaled the end of his political career. After all, who would vote for a candidate who couldn't even walk around shaking hands and kissing babies? His mother, Sarah, agreed with him. A dominant force throughout Franklin's life, she told him it was time to retire from politics and turn his attention elsewhere. Eleanor, though, had always noted the sparkle in his eyes whenever a conversation turned political. She knew Franklin was never happier than during a spirited exchange of how his state of New York or the nation itself should be run. Family, friend, and advisor Lewis Howe agreed with her. Together they managed to thwart his mother's will and turn Franklin's goals back to the political scene. Over the next few months, Franklin struggled to improve both his physical and political strength. He avoided being seen in his wheelchair and was eventually able to walk short distances in his braces. He also had steel leg braces designed, which could be locked in place to keep his legs straight when he gave a speech. Slowly, Franklin began to reconnect with the political allies he had made during his 2 terms as a New York State Senator, his 7-year stretch as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and his run for the vice presidency. His acceptance among the party elite was confirmed when they asked him to nominate New York Governor Al Smith for president at the 1924 Democratic Convention. By that time, though, his relationship with Eleanor had changed. 3 years before the onset of Franklin's polio, Eleanor was devastated to discover Franklin's love letters from Lucy Mercer, her young social secretary. Confronting Franklin, Eleanor offered divorce. According to several resources, he considered it. His mother, however, soon straightened him out. She informed him that if he disgraced the Roosevelt name through divorce, she would disinherit him. Lewis Howe further explained that the move would end Franklin's political career. This outcome was likely more threatening to him than the fear of being disinherited. As early as his law school days, he began telling friends that he seriously planned to become president. This self-confidence likely took root because he grew up as the apple of his mother's eye. His father, James, was 53 when his 27-year-old wife, Sarah, gave birth to Franklin, their only child. Both sides of his heritage, the Roosevelts and the Delanos, were prosperous New England families. James, who was often described as aloof and detached, happily turned over the reins of child-rearing to his wife. In addition to Sarah's constant control of Franklin's social contacts and schooling, her intense nurturing would not end with his marriage. When Franklin fell in love with Eleanor Roosevelt, his fifth cousin once removed, and Theodore Roosevelt's niece, Sarah made it clear Eleanor did not match her vision of Franklin's future mate. The family relationship didn't seem to bother her, but she didn't feel Eleanor fit the mold of the sophisticated society type her husband should marry. In time, she reluctantly accepted the pairing. That acceptance, though, didn't encompass releasing her hold on Franklin's future. The newlyweds settled in a townhouse supplied by Sarah, connected to her own residence by sliding doors. In fact, her dominance in family matters continued to reach into the raising of her 5 grandchildren. Eleanor's oldest son, James, later recalled that Sarah told him, "Your mother only bore you. I am more your mother than your mother is." Eventually, though, Eleanor's fiercely independent character materialized. Ironically, many historians cite her discovery of Franklin's affair as the point in her life that transformed her from a milquetoast wallflower into a resilient social crusader. Her early life had certainly not instilled the confidence she would require. Her beloved father's increasing alcoholism led to his commitment to a sanatorium. As if this wasn't a bad enough blow to her emotional stability, she suffered a string of intense losses during a 2-year period. At 8, her mother died, and her father and younger brother passed away during the next year. Eleanor and her younger sister then became the wards of their maternal grandmother. Sadly, she had little use for Eleanor. Due to the little girl's plain looks and serious adult-like demeanor, she nicknamed her Granny. Needless to say, this was not a confidence-building time for Eleanor and likely helped develop her painful, timid nature. Years later, however, after learning of Franklin's infidelity, that passive demeanor dissolved. She and Franklin remained married, but their relationship became more of a political partnership of strong, independent personalities. Once she stepped out of Franklin's shadow, Eleanor forged a new model for the nation's First Lady. She turned her energies toward her long-held concerns in the areas of child labor, civil rights, women's emancipation, and other social issues. As she did, she captivated millions of America's underrepresented citizens who felt, for the first time, they had a voice in their government. Simultaneously, Franklin provided the country with a stable and optimistic father figure who helped to calm their fears. Through their 12 legendary years in the White House, Franklin and Eleanor led the country through the dispiriting years of the Great Depression, as well as the horror-filled battles of World War II. Along the way, they left a collection of vivid images still preserved in history books. Unfortunately, when today's students look at those pictures, the sterile black-and-white photographs can't convey the whole story. As they glance at the photo of a family leaning toward the radio to hear Franklin's fireside chats, they don't feel the calming effects of his soothing, deliberate messages as the waves of war battered a fatigued world. And the picture of Eleanor's confident smile as she sat in the midst of protesting World War I veterans doesn't portray how her very presence calmed the raging gales of poverty and disillusionment. It's a shame they can't step into those pictures to witness a time when millions of Americans desperately clung to the words and deeds of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, their anchors in the storm.